And it got to the point where, I found paraphernalia in the house. Now this is fourth grade. I found paraphernalia in the house. I wanted to get out of there so bad. I took the stuff in my backpack to school, to the principal's office, to try to get myself out of there. I didn't know what to do, thinking maybe the police would come and they would remove me from the house so I could come to my mom's up here in Akron.
So why don't we just start back to your childhood?
I was born in a town about 35 miles north of Kansas City called St. Joseph, Missouri. Growing up was just like Believe It to Beaver, the Brady Bunch, but that was the total opposite. I used to watch those shows because that's how I always wanted my family to be. And I envied TV. I was the kid that would always try to seek out friends that had a family like that so I could go to their house and hang out. My dad was very abusive, at a young age. And, being very abusive to my mom. I remember walking in a couple of times, even as young as first grade, and seeing him on top of my mom just wailing on her. And, not much a little guy can do at that age. But even with that going on, it's like I had this drive. I wanted to seek my dad's approval. Every little boy wants to be like his dad. It kind of seems to be the pro quo in life. And as horrible as my dad was, I wanted him to be my father. I wanted him to be my son. And my parents split up when I was in elementary school, probably about third grade, and I was still living in Missouri at the time. And my dad ended up moving to Tennessee, and I lived in St. Joe with my mom. Pretty much, she did the best that she could. She was going to college, trying to work. So, I was grandma and grandpa's a lot. And that was my escape. That was my getaway.
That was your mom's parents?
My mom's mom and dad, and actually my dad's mom. Even after my parents got divorced, my dad's mom and my other grandparents and my mom, they all got along real well. My dad's mom knew how he was. She didn't agree with it. She was a very church-going lady, and my dad was actually adopted by her and my grandpa on his side. So I actually spent most of my weekends with my dad's mom, and that's kind of how I grew up. At a young age.
Were you ever able to find out why your dad turned out the way he did?
Even to this day, I think about that, and sometimes it's almost like I catch myself trying to make an excuse for him. I know my grandpa wasn't there for him. So, I sit there and say, well, he never learned. My grandpa was the kind my grandpa had a great job. He was the president of a big food company back in Elwood, Kansas. And so they had money growing up. And, I remember hearing stories about, when my dad was young, for his birthday or Christmas, he would get a pony. That was, I think, my grandpa's way of, trying to provide for him without being there. He tried to buy his love, and I even saw that at a young age whenever I would go over and see my grandpa, at even 6, 7, 8 years old, he would give me $100 bill every time, I would go over. And at that time, I didn't know that, that I didn't really know what it meant. I thought that it was love, but as I got older, I saw that that's the only way he knew how to express any type of feeling was just to throw money at it. And, even though at a young age I loved going over there and getting money, still there was a void there. So I try to.
Well, what did your dad go on to school, and did he have a good job? What did your dad do?
Honestly, I can't remember my dad working a whole lot at all. I remember when he lived in Tennessee, before I moved up here to Akron in 6th grade, I had lived with him for about a year down there in about the 4th or 5th grade. I remember he worked for a car wash company, but other than that, and I don't like to use the word mooch, but my dad just, it's like he didn't have, I don't know if he didn't have any drive. I don't know what it was. I know when I was younger, he was a real bad alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
Him and my mom were still together. He ended up at the Mayo Clinic, and I was really young. I vaguely remember going up there to visit him, and he was a bad drinker. And even when he came home from the Mayo Clinic, he would still drink, but not as bad as what it was. As he got older.
Do your grandparents, did they believe it was genetic, his disposition? I mean, there's the whole theory of nature versus nurture. Did they believe he turned out like that due to his genetics?
I honestly don't believe so, because they didn't really know a whole lot about his genetics. Him being adopted, I found out a lot of genetics later on after my grandparents had passed away. And there was a lot of alcoholism. I found out that I believe it was genetics. There was a lot of alcoholism, a lot of addiction in the family, in the bloodline. But at the time,
there's an element of nature and nurture, but I've read a lot of research studies on this, and I've talked to a lot of people that have adopted kids, and their kids versus the adopted child turn out very differently. And it's amazing that our genetics are carried through us. And do you think about that a lot? Do you think I have my dad in me so I could also turn into an abuser? Or did you turn into an abuser? Did you get quite abusive?
I'm not gonna lie. I was very mentally abusive, very verbally abusive. I wasn't a woman hitter. I didn't believe in that. Maybe pushed down a few times. I never close fisted hit a woman. That was one thing. But I knew I had my dad in me. As much as I told myself that I was never going to be like him, I grew up exactly like him. He's got a sister. My aunt was also adopted. She was adopted from a different family, and she turned out fine. Worked her whole life, is retired, and so the genetic thing, yes, I do believe that. I do believe I had my dad in me. That's why it's very important for me to break this cycle now, because I don't want my kids. I want to show them a better way. I don't want my kids to turn out like I did. I swore up and down I wouldn't.
And is your dad still alive?
No, that's me and my dad. As he got older, I tried to. I still even at 42 years old, I was still trying to seek his approval. And last year, when my grandmother passed away, she left me about $11,000, my mom's mom, and I had blown through it in about a month on dope. And I talked to my dad on Christmas Eve. Actually, it was a couple years ago. I'm sorry. I talked to my dad on Christmas Eve. 2014 was the last time I talked to him, and we had gotten in an argument. I told him, "Fuck you," and I hung up on him. Got arrested the next day because I had some warrants out. Ultimately ended up going to prison. And I tried to call him from prison 3 months later to apologize, and he was dead. Didn't get a chance to apologize to him. And even though I wrote, one of my little things about him called Dear Dad, I still think about that all the time, because I wonder, even after all the shit I went through and all the stuff he's done, I still was seeking his approval. 43 years old, I still just wanted my dad in my life.
Did he ever say to you that he loved you and he was proud of you?
I remember a few times, when his mom was dying, my grandmother that I grew up with and the one I spent most of the time with, it was probably about 5 years ago. And me and my girlfriend at the time, I drove back from Ohio here to Missouri. I was supposed to come back and say goodbye to her. She was on her way out. And I remember, when I got there, my dad had told me he was proud of me, that I was doing good and whatnot. But that night, and I vaguely remember this, I had gotten drunk and I got my girlfriend lost in this strange town, so she had to call my dad. And long story short, my dad got me back to the hotel, and I remember him tucking me in bed, and I was crying. And I looked up at him and he said, "What's wrong?" And I told him, I said, "This is all I ever wanted from you, was to you to tuck me in when I was a kid." And he told me he loved me, and I'll never forget that,
Why do you think he found it so hard to did he have so much shame, do you think?
I think he did a lot of it, and I think as time went on, and, it's just like, regrets, I've got him in life, I just, it's one thing where I'll just call tomorrow. I'll just do it tomorrow. And you push it off for so long and you just stuff it for so long that, it gets buried, And I know I have had a problem with a few things myself, stuff with my children. you know. And even though he wasn't in active addiction, he wasn't a happy person, you know. I think he had a lot of regrets in life.
How old were you when you first
My
became
first
an addict?
experience, I drank as any normal, kid did in middle school, a little bit in high school. Never really had a problem with alcohol. I was a baseball player. Got to play in the League World Series when I was 14, and I was also a wrestler. And I got hurt in high school wrestling, and that was my first experience with opiates. I got prescribed, I think it was Vicodin, and I knew something was wrong the first time I took one because it felt way too good. The feeling, going up your back once it kicks in, the tingliness, the warmness, it just, something didn't feel right, but it was like a whole new, a whole new Rob. It was like, I had, I wasn't shy. I wasn't anxious, It's like the guy that goes out and gets drunk, he can dance a little better. It's almost like I felt like I fit in a little better, I don't know how to explain it, except it just gave me everything that I never had. My addiction on pills probably took off real bad probably about 3 or 4 years after I started taking them. Now, I was still in addiction because, I would seek them, or I would go to the doctor and get pills when I didn't need them. But probably about 4 or 5 years after I took that first one, when I was about 17 or 18, I started doing way out of the ordinary stuff. At the peak of my pill addiction, I had a little notebook because at this time, pharmacies and doctors, they weren't connected together like they are now. And I had a book that I kept track of, and I had maybe 8 or 9 different doctors that I would see. I had wrote down what pharmacy I could go to on what day, so that way they wouldn't crisscross. I was in pain management. I had a couple different surgeons because at one point in my addiction, I'm at the doctor's office, and I'm the guy that addictive behavior. So when the doctor and the nurse leaves, I got to go through shit. I got to open the drawers up, see what's in here. Maybe it might be something I need, And I found some Novocaine, and I'm gonna take these couple bottles of Novocaine. You never know when you might need Novocaine, right? And who thinks shit like that? An addict does. You never know. Put the Novocaine up in the cupboard next to the mayonnaise. Maybe you'll need it someday. I don't know. So I took it home, and I remember that I was starting to run out of excuses for pain medication. Your back can only hurt so much. Your knee can only hurt so much. So I get this wild idea one day. I'm going to numb my hand up with Novocaine, and I'm going to do some damage to my hand. So my left hand, all around my thumb area, I took the Novocaine, and I numbed it up real good. And I popped my thumb up in the air to where that tendon will rise up, and I took a straight blade. Now, even though I didn't feel it, I couldn't watch it. I turned my head, and I saw it all the way down through that tendon to my bone.
Oh God, I'm visualizing it right now. And you just
knowing, yes,
you just did it and not looked, and then you just knew, okay, this is my way to get back in the door.
Exactly, and I knew, and I don't want to say this, but I knew I was good when I heard the tendon pop because I knew I got all the way through it then. So, I knew I was going to have multiple surgeries, and, the last thing I thought about was how am I going to, what am I going to tell them when I get to the hospital? I didn't care about a story because I knew I was going to get some pills, and I made up some kind of story about how I was working on a car and it got caught in a fan blade. Okay, well, most fan blades, yeah, they might do a little bit of damage. They're not going to cut through your tendon all the way to the bone, but it didn't matter. My story worked. And, I got what I want.
Do you think people suspected? I mean, is that common? Like when you do your groups with other addicts, do they all say, yeah, they self-harmed in order to get more drugs?
Out of all of the 9 treatment centers I've been to, when I tell people that story, I get the same look as the very first person I told many years ago. That like you're batshit crazy kind of look, bro. I've heard the stories where people have punch themselves, punch a wall or something, break their hand or this or that. But to go as far as, that's a whole lot of thinking when you're stealing Novocaine and you're doing, it's almost like plotting,
Yeah.
It's just a whole lot of effort put into it. And everybody's just like, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah. And I said, well, here's even a better one for you. I'm sitting there one night, after I'd exhausted, all this, with my hand and my tendon and stuff, because I would even tell them, look, I think the tendon's starting to tear, doc. It's hurting really bad. I need you to open me back up. And I had him open me back up 3 or 4 times on purpose, knowing that it wasn't tearing, just to get more pills. And after, I think it was after the 4th time, the doc came in and he sat down and he said, "Rob, we need to have a talk." And I said, "What you mean, doc?" He goes, "When we were putting you under, you made the comment, you told me to slow down because it feels real good. Apparently when they were pushing the anesthesia in, I told the doctor, 'Can you slow down, please? That feels really good.' And then he proceeded to tell me the amount of anesthesia that he had to use to put me under. So he knew there was something going on. And that was my first experience, I think, of somebody starting to catch on to me. My girlfriend at the time didn't even know. My 13-year-old son had just been born, so she was working. I was staying home with him the first year of his life. So, she had no clue what I was doing during the day. And that was my first experience of somebody actually catching on to me. So that avenue kind of started to dry up, and I knew I had to do something because at this time I'm in full-blown addiction with pills. I'm going through 90 Percocet in 4 or 5 days. So I'm sitting there in the living room one night making egg salad, and I've got this big butcher knife cutting up deviled eggs. And for whatever reason it tempted me, I just took the knife and on the same hand, I stabbed all the way down through on my pinky side, and there's a nerve that runs down the side of your hand called the ulnar nerve. And I stabbed all the way through my hand and pulled the knife out the other side and ended up severing that ulnar nerve. Kind of the same thing with the tendon. I had to have a couple surgeries doing that.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
but for some reason, it doesn't shock me. Like, I think that an addict's brain is like, they'll do whatever it takes to get the drug, right? People, they rob, they hurt other people, they prostitute themselves. Like, it kind of sounds pretty realistic based on how powerful the drug is.
Exactly. And it comes down to the insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. I've used the Novocaine on my hand before and had it smashed with a sledgehammer and told the doctors that the gun safe has fell on it or something, It was, and it was starting to get bad. And right after all this was going on was about the time that pharmacies and doctors' offices were starting to get connected. So, who knows what I would have did, if it would have kept going that way with that. I had to put my off the streets for a minute, was on oxys for a minute until I got introduced to, my first little bag of dope. The last time I took Vicodin, I had to take 43 of them at once just to catch a buzz. And it was doing so much damage to my stomach and my liver that it just, I was.
How would you get the money for 43 Vicodin? What would the street value of that be?
At the time for the Vicodin, I was paying probably about $3 a pill. So, even on the low, if I could find them for $2 a pill, that's still $86, for one buzz. And both my grandmas, my grandmas were probably my biggest enablers, bless their hearts, because they had no clue. They were oblivious. I'm living in Ohio at this time. They're back in Missouri. They really had no clue.
So how would you get them to give you money? So you'd call them up and say, "Hey, Grandma."
We just had a baby at the time, so obviously I exploited that avenue. The baby needed diapers, baby needed formula, WIC got cut off. They cut the food stamps off because we couldn't make it down there because the car broke down to fill out the food stamp stuff. I exploited the hell out of my son. Telling them, we needed money for the utilities. Grandma, we can't have no heat in the winter time with the baby here, stuff like that. And it really wasn't hard, I had insurance at the time, and insurance was actually starting to catch on, so I could only bill so often through my insurance. Still had my little book, on what doctors I could go to and stuff. But the pharmacies, they were starting to connect the pharmacies together. So that was a little bit trickier. Sometimes I would even drive, 100 miles away to find a little mom and pop pharmacy out in the middle of the sticks that I knew wasn't connected. The lengths that a person will go to just to fill a prescription for 20 Vicodin, to drive 2 hours just to get 20 pills that you're going to take as soon as you get them. And the buzz is probably going to be worn off before you get home, but you don't think about that. You don't think about after, you don't think about all the shit you got to go through to get it. It just, when you get that on your mind, it consumes you. It totally takes over.
When did your addiction turn you into a criminal?
I, I I had already started on heroin, and I was already past the point of snorting it. Probably about 10, 11 years ago. Shortly after I had started shooting it, I remember the first time I even shot up, I was actually outside of an AA meeting. I was with a girl, and I always snorted it. I couldn't get nobody to show me how to shoot it. And I asked her, I said, I said, what's the difference between the way you do it and the way I do it? And she said, the difference between a Chevy and a Cadillac, baby, you want to try? And before she could finish the sentence, I had my arm out and it was over. And once you put something in a needle and load it up and do it that way, for me, there was no going backwards. It was game on. If I didn't have a needle to shoot it up, I would either turn it down or I would spend hours trying to find, a rig to do it the way I wanted to do it. And at the time, my mom wasn't real hip to what I was doing. So, I could get money out of her. I got only child syndrome. Bless her heart. She went to Al-Anon. We're master manipulators. And, I manipulated the hell out of her, to get money. Probably about 10 years ago is when, I would start having to steal, stolen from her, stolen from my grandmother's. When I went to prison, it was actually because I had stolen checks from my grandma, her mom, and I'd forged them. And my grandma didn't want me to go to prison, but my mom had power of attorney over her, and my mom was the one that pressed charges. I don't know if it was the crowd that I was hanging out with. At the time, there was just a whole lot of pills. The pills were the big thing in the area that I was living in. Oxys were real big. I was messing around with the oxys. And I think a lot of it just had to do with the crowd, that I was running around with. And, my girlfriend knew about it, but it was all me. So if I really wanted to be it, I could have let them go down for it, but that just wasn't the right thing to do. I was the one doing it. Her mommy had nothing to do with it. Her mom was nice enough to cash them for us. Her mom was our biggest enabler. I remember in a 9-month period from April to January, and I'll never forget this number, her mom gave us $73,325 in cash.
What?
In 9 months, from April to January. $73,325. I will never forget that number. I used to write it down in the book, Carlos, in case someday I ever hit the lottery and I want to be able to repay her back. I would write it down 7 days a week. Not one day went by when we got less than 300. The average was between 700 and 800 every day for 9 months. Some days we would get 1,200. Her and her mom had this sick relationship. She would call her mom up. She's 12 years younger than me, and she's a spoiled brat. She would call her mom up. I remember coming in one time, and she's got her top off, sitting on the floor, kicking and screaming like a baby. And I'm like, what's wrong? This bitch is only going to give us 300 a day. I'm like, what? Are you serious? You're complaining about that? But she would go to the bank with her mom on Cuyahoga Falls, up in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. They would meet at the PNC, because sometimes I would go, and it got to the point where it disturbed me so much I would quit going. I tried to talk her out of going. We'll figure out another way to get money, because no mother and daughter should be like this.
And do you still talk to that girlfriend?
She's locked up right now until September. She was on probation for drugs. Ultimately ended up violating probation. We were together 6 years. We were together when I went to prison, and she was still so bad on heroin that when I went to prison, she had linked up with an old high school friend. She actually ended up getting pregnant. And when I came home, that messed me up pretty bad. The little boy is, I don't want to say his name, but the little boy, he just turned 2 in February, and she wasn't home for his birthday. She'd been locked up. But when I came home from prison, she's pregnant. She's locked up at this point. I went to go see her. She refused my visit because she hadn't told me at this time she was pregnant. The little boy's father hasn't seen him once in 2 years, doesn't want nothing to do with him. So, over this past summer, we were talking, and she wanted me to step in and be his father, and we had tried to have kids before. We had 3 miscarriages. We found 2 of them in the toilet, when we were together, been to hell and back. We were sober when we got together, but, over the summer and when I was sober for a period over the summer and she was still actively using, we kind of started to grow apart again, you know. I would send her money, find out that the money wasn't going to the baby. I would get to video chat and FaceTime with him when I was following her rules, sending her money. When the money stopped, she wouldn't let me FaceTime with the baby, you know. And even though it was FaceTime, I got attached to him, you know. I got attached to him, and she just recently got locked up about, I don't know, maybe a month and a half ago. And I've tried writing, you know, but haven't gotten a response.
Well, who raises the baby? Her mother?
Her parents do. Yeah, because she was living with her parents.
How did her parents have the money? Do they have good jobs in order to keep?
Her mom did. Her dad didn't know anything about it. It was all of their retirement that was blown through, and her dad actually, when we got on top of the $73,325, her mom also paid our $625 a month rent for 2 years in Stowe, Ohio. So it was over $100,000.
Oh my gosh!
Like I said, I wrote it down in this book. Well, when we got kicked out of our apartment, I had to put part of my stuff in storage in their garage. Well, my book that I wrote all this in wasn't part of their stuff, and her dad found it. You know, ended up dipping out on her mom for a minute. You know, almost caused a divorce. Thank God it didn't. You know, they hate me to this day. You know, they say it's all my fault. My mom hates her because my mom says it's her fault. You know how it is in a relationship like that. You kids go with the parent, the parent side with the kids and stuff. And reality, it was both of us. You know, it was both of us. I care about her. I always will. Won't never let nothing bad happen to her ever. But it's just one of the things where I can't be with her. You know.
Do you think you can resist getting back together with her?
That's a good question. I hope because I don't see any way that, even if we were both sober, I don't see any way that it would ever work out, just for the fact that there was trust broken. Even though she was in active addiction, there was trust broken. I was one of the kind of people that, even in my addiction, I still had certain expectations, and there's certain things I didn't do, so you better not do them either.
Yeah.
And when you just cross that line, and it just, you can blame it on the dope. Okay, whatever. It's just, always care about you. Won't let nothing happen to you. But I don't think I could just ever look at you the same again. I just, dumb it down for me a little bit.
Do you think you could fall in love with someone that had not been through addiction?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess I could, I've always wondered, I used to always tell myself, maybe that's what I need, is to go find somebody that's never been through addiction or don't know anything about it. But then on the flip side of that, if I'm having a bad day or something's going on, and they don't know how to relate, or they can't understand what I've been through or I'm going through, it could be bad too, and I wouldn't want to hurt them, or fault them just because they've never been through addiction and they don't understand where I'm coming from, and I wake up having a bad day. That's not fair. It's not fair to them.
So you feel like,
I'm not about hurting people,
You feel like just it's an easier communication because you don't feel you have to hide things, probably.
Exactly. And communication is one of the biggest things. Like, communication and trust are the top two things for me in a relationship. And without the communication, with no communication, you're not going to have trust. They work hand in hand, in my opinion.
And what about when you leave? How do you enter in the workforce? Like, how do you approach that whole thing? So if I can just clarify vocabulary. So pills is like pharmaceutical drugs.
Yeah.
And
Percocet, Vicodin, Oxys.
And then dope would be heroin. What else would be in dope?
Yeah, just the heroin for a while, until all this other synthetic fentanyl and carfentanyl stuff came out. I was probably 6 or 7, maybe 8 years into my addiction with shooting dope, before I'd even got introduced to fentanyl. And I actually got introduced to it by accident. I was supposed to be getting cocaine, and it wasn't cocaine, it was fentanyl. And for people, at least my experience with shooting fentanyl, it doesn't last as long, but it hits you a lot harder. So I knew it wasn't, I knew it was a different kind of dope, and I started inquiring about it.
Do you think the streets just no longer have clean heroin? I mean, a lot of people that I've spoken to, whether it be a drug dealer or a drug user, says that nobody wants stuff without fentanyl because fentanyl is so much more powerful. Would you say that's true? Are people looking?
Absolutely. Absolutely, and it's all coming from overseas in China. I got a real good friend that's all he messes with is carfentanil, even to this day. The last time I did carfentanil, I snorted $3 worth, and I don't know if you know what weight the weight wise is. That's less than 0.05 of a gram. $3 worth I snorted, and I died. I woke up in an ambulance. They had to sit and hit me 6 times with Narcan. And I had 3 IVs in my neck that they had to call ahead to get permission from the doctor to put in, or I would have died.
But that's a drug that they use to sedate large mammals.
Animals.
Right?
Yep.
Like elephants.
Absolutely.
And like big, huge. So a little tiny bit.
$3 worth.
$3 kill you.
It did.
How do they get the carfentanil? Like who deals that coming? Like who do you know that...
People buy it offline, I mean, there's, for America, there was a lot of, veterinarian places, that were getting broke into and stuff, stuff was getting stolen like that, exotic animal vets, especially like in Arizona, where they, might have like exotic animals out there, zoos and stuff, you can get it anywhere. I mean, you can get on the internet right now and order fentanyl or anything like that. I wouldn't personally do it. I don't mess with the internet. I don't mess with the mail and stuff like that. But that's where it's coming from, China, and it's killing. It's killed everybody I know. I'm so tired of it.
So basically, every drug can get made, man-made, with stuff under the kitchen sink.
Pretty much, heroin, opiates and stuff that's a little bit harder, but it's readily available over the internet, fentanyl and stuff like that, carfentanil.
So how do you order it over the internet? So, I mean, it's funny because I got this email from this distributor that said, oh, I can get you wholesale prices for fentanyl and carfentanil. And I was thinking, oh my God, that's like an email that they just send to me. That's crazy. I figured it's just like a scam, whatever. Right. But you just buy it over the internet?
Well, the way that I have always known, there's a lot of websites out there, obviously that advertise it, and the ones that I've always found out that were the legit ones, they're willing to send you like maybe a 7 or an 8 gram sample for $50. Worst case scenario, if it is fake, you only lose $50. Even worse case scenario, the alphabet boys be kicking down your door, for trying to order, fentanyl off the internet. But usually, generally, those are the ones, you can tell the real ones from the fake ones. They're willing to send you a sample.
Okay, so here's one right here that I just found. Tranquil fish sedation. $275, and I can just buy it. And it says it's to sedate your fish.
And see, that's the way they
market it. That's right.
With bath salts, after it got made illegal, they started calling it plant food, or they would call it pipe cleaner.
Like this one's $22.99, a 5-pound tub of horse supplement.
Right. Exactly. It's their way of skirting around it.
How often have you tried to kill yourself? And what triggers that when you're like, enough, like I'm done?
I honestly couldn't tell you how many times I've tried to OD on purpose. It's so many, and it's just that pitiful place where you just, you wake up, if you have a roof over your head to wake up to, if I wasn't sleeping outside or at the shelter, no power, no food in the house, hadn't taken a bath or showered for a couple of days, maybe a week. And you just realize that if this is the way my life's supposed to be, if this is my destiny, then it's time for me to tap out because I'm not going to live my life this way anymore.
Do you see any light at the end of the tunnel when you're like this? I mean, do you just think this is never going to get better?
I've thought that before until this time around. This time is totally different for me. I'm doing things that I've never done before. I've got people reaching out to me, asking me to help them. I got more out when I came to treatment the last time. I shared and I opened up and I talked about things that I had never talked about over the years. And I was sitting there talking to one of the guys last night about yesterday when we were talking and how you triggered something. We were talking about my dad, how I started crying. That was the first time I cried about my dad in a long time when I was talking about how I was drunk back there when I went back to say goodbye to my grandma and he tucked me in as a grown man. And that's all I wanted for him to do growing up as a kid. And I forgot all about that. I was telling my friends about how you're some kind of guru, how you got that out of me. I never even remembered that memory until we started talking. And I realized that was the first time I cried about my dad in years. And to me, that shows growth, that I'm able to deal with stuff like that now instead of shove it down, because people like us, we just shove shit down on top of it, on top. And it's not the big things that trip me up. It's the little things that happen in life that put me back out there. I can deal with big stuff. I can deal with people dying because I'm numb. I don't cry anymore. Mm-hmm. But it's the little things. It's the little things for somebody like me. I can't speak for nobody else, but for me, it'd be something little. My girlfriend forgot to pick something up on the way home from work for me or something, just something dumb. And that's what's always been, what's taking me back out, the little dumb shit. But this time's just different. It's different. I wake up happy, I share, I talk a lot, I share my stories with people. I put another one of my little videos out there today, and one of my friends that's here, he's from Connecticut. His mom, always gives me these inspirational words. That's what keeps me going. That's that juice for me now. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there is hope for me now. I believe there is. And, little things like my mom telling me that she's proud of me. She tells me that today. I don't remember stuff like that ever happening. One of the guys in the house here that's been here twice as long as I have told me he looked up to me. I've never had somebody tell me that, and it's just by me doing the next right thing,
I feel like the life of an addict is so full of pain. I've never met an addict that said to me, oh no, my life was perfect. It was really great. And then I just got addicted to drugs because I was bored. And I'm always like, how are people so strong to not do drugs? That's my question.
I believe I was born an addict. I'm not going to lie. It was until the time that I put my first one in me that I would discover that out, because I was that kid, K through 12. I got suspended every year of school, K through 12, mm-hmm. All of them. Normal kids, that doesn't happen to normal kids. And I'm not saying that I'm different. I'm not saying that I'm unique. I'm just saying that there's something about me, that was off, whether it's in my brain chemistry or what. But normal kids don't get suspended every year, kindergarten through 12. I believe I was born with it. That's just me though. I know, like I said before, my dad was an alcoholic and found out that his adoptive whole family, there was mm-hmm. addiction all through the family. So, it kind of confirmed my theory a little bit, but, I just,
do you think that now you can become addicted to being sober? Like, do you feel like you can put the same energy into your addiction for drugs as now into addiction to make a difference or help others? Or
I have to put more energy into it. And for me, it's about wording. I'm very careful about wording. So when you say getting addicted to sobriety, that for me would be a bad thing. Okay. Having a passion now, yes, because when I first started doing my writing about a month ago, I went to one of the counselors here. And I'm like, Bob, I think I got a new addiction. So he started asking me some questions. He says, does it consume your whole day? And I'm like, no. And he's like, are you doing it when you're not supposed to be doing it and doing other stuff? And I said, well, no. He goes, okay, Rob, it's called a passion.
Okay.
And I got it.
That's interesting.
For me. Well, every other time, I've left treatment, either I went back home to my mom's, which, I'm not going to do that this time, or I went to like a sober house, sober facility. What they're trying to do here is once the program's over for me, to where I would still, they're trying to make part of the hotel possibly into sober housing for people that have done good, like me and a couple other guys. When you go out of your way and they see you doing extraordinary things like what some of us are doing, and they see you making an impact on this place, because like I said, it's new, and paving the way for the new guys coming in, leading by example, there would be an opportunity possibly to continue to stay here for sober housing and be able to go out to work and still live here, because even though the front doors are wide open, Carla, I feel safe here.
Yeah, of course.
And it's hard to, I don't know, it might be hard for people to understand, but like when we go to Walmart on our Saturday trips, I get anxiety just leaving the building. And obviously someday the time's going to have to come, but when I'm around people like me, that understand me, that I've gotten close to, there's guys here in the building that I would take a bullet for and die in a minute, because I know they would me too. I mean, there's nothing more humbling, and I'm getting goosebumps even saying this right now, nothing more, I don't even know how to say it, but when all of us get around, we have our groups together and tears are shed, a bunch of grown men, veterans that are here, and we're all just sitting around crying, talking about our feelings and how much we care about each other. There's no drug in this world that compares to that feeling. To
feeling loved, right? I mean, feeling loved is powerful.
Self-worth, love, exactly. Because I haven't had that for so many years. And it's not that my mom didn't give it to me. I don't think my mom understood me. She did the best she could, and it's just, it's hard to explain,
and how,
I'm always going around.
How do you get ready for integration back into the workforce? Like, what job do you see yourself doing, or what are you thinking?
Well, probably with you getting ready to go in the summertime, I'm going to try to maybe get into some type of construction. There's a guy here that has worked asphalt for many, many years. Said he'd get a couple of us, some jobs. It's just when you have a lot of felonies and tattoos all over your body, and you get profiled when you go in to do certain job applications. There's only certain places that will hire me, and I get that. I understand that. I don't have a problem working in a factory the rest of my life. I do still have my driver's license. That's one thing I ain't screw up. So I do have a driver's license, which is a bonus. Maybe get a job driving or something. But that's one thing they do here, though. They take us to out to the resource center, the job center, and we put applications in and stuff like that. And one thing I am actually working on that I didn't tell you about before I leave here, my counselor is going to help me get my CDCA, Chemical Dependency Counselor Associate, I think is what the last letter stands for. That's something I've always wanted to do for years, was to be some type of counselor.
Oh, that's amazing.
It would be my dream to be able to go talk to high school kids.
Oh, that's awesome.
About addiction. So she's already promised me she will help me get my CDCA. One of the guys that's been here almost 4 months, one of the vets, is actually taking his CDCA test right now. And that's why this place is different, because the owner's all about that. I mean, he's the one, he pushes for that, for stuff like that. Every other treatment place, like I said, you go in, do your time, out the door, and if you need something, call us. But we're like a family here. We look out for each other. We take care of each other. The owner, if you want to take your CDCA test, he'll order the books in for us. I mean, he promotes, and I found out yesterday that when you had asked me why he was doing this, and I told you one of his brothers had passed away. He had two brothers that passed away. I was wrong.
I feel like, I've spoken to you for quite a few hours, and I feel like you have so much love in you. Like, you just seem so, I don't know, compassionate, caring. Yeah. Like even when you were in your height of addiction, I have this feeling you'd still be a good person under it all, that wanted to always do the right things, but the drugs were very controlling.
Exactly.
Like, I can't imagine you being like a hard ass that goes and beats the shit out of people.
No, that wasn't my MO. You know,
No. Was your MO
as crazy
very
as I may look,
chill?
but
Were you like was
yeah,
your MO like get along with everyone, chill? Yeah.
exactly. You
Yeah, I
know,
get.
it's even more that way as I'm getting older. You know, the older I get, I find it takes too much energy to be mad at somebody. It takes way too much energy. You know, if you get me out of my box, okay, I'm gonna go pray about it. You know, I'm gonna stay in my own lane and I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing. But it just too much energy. Life is too short. I've lost too many people. You know, I'm trying to spread hope, not dope anymore. You know,
Yeah, I love that.
it's
Spread hope, not
not
dope.
dope.
I like that saying.
Yep.
That's a good one. Spread hope, not dope.
And
Spread hope.